Potent Productivity Podcast, where we pull back the curtain and dive into the real emotional journeys behind entrepreneurship. We're your hosts, Sarah
and Robert, and we know that building a business isn't just about crushing your to-do list or chasing overnight success. It's about navigating the ups and downs and unexpected turns that come with following your passion.
We're not here to sell you easy wins or rehearse the same tired success stories you've heard 1,000 times. We're here to talk about the moments when enthusiasm is buried beneath a mountain of tasks, when self-doubt creeps in, and when you're not sure where your road leads next.
So each week, we'll share raw conversations, real lessons, and practical strategies to help you reconnect with your creativity, build resilience, and rediscover what excited you about your business in the first place.
If you're ready for honest talk, community, and actionable inspiration, you're in the right place. Let's get real. Let's reclaim your potent productivity together. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Potent Productivity Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Pitts, and with me I have Robert Cabeca. Hey Robert.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, Sarah. Hello, everybody.
So today we are talking about how to overcome imposter syndrome once and for all. And I know imposter syndrome is one of those things that strikes business owners of all levels at any time. So I've worked with people who are just starting out in business. I've worked with multimillionaires, and imposter syndrome strikes everybody at some point. So this is an episode that is close to my heart because it's happened to me before too. We spoke about that in the last episode, actually. So if you haven't heard that yet, make sure you go and check out episode number 5. But today I want to give you some steps really as to how we're going to change your focus and how we're going to get past this imposter syndrome. And the first thing I think we need to recognize is that words won't do the job, you know? So we've all had that situation where we felt really fat, or we've got a huge zit on our nose or something like that, and we feel terrible. And somebody goes, "Oh, you look really great today." It's like, oh yeah, whatever, you know? Or we just don't believe what it is that they're saying. So when you hear them, it can make you feel really uncomfortable if you're feeling that way out, you know. And I had a client when I was doing my personal training and inside of a gym, and she was obsessed with the difference in appearance of her shoulders. And she would train and train and train this one shoulder to try and make it look like the other side. And while she was obsessing with all of those things that she didn't like about her shoulders, she was missing out on all of the other stuff that was really great. You know, I don't know if that's happened to you.
Well, it's interesting you talk about this because there's so many different layers to what imposter syndrome is, and the idea that words won't change that. So you mentioned, what somebody else might say to somebody, but I get more focused on what I say to myself that I don't believe, right? It's
Interesting.
like, oh, I am a leader. I am a good leader. I am, a fantastic chocolatier or a marketer or whatever. And it's like, no, I don't believe, but you don't believe it inside, right? And it's like, everybody knows the word affirmations. Oh, just use some affirmations. It's like, oh, I'm wonderful and I'm beautiful and I'm this and that, but I'm a billionaire, whatever. And it's like, but then you're like, well, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And it's like it's interesting, you and I come at this from a couple different angles, which is fantastic. And I think it's just really important how I've related to it, because the way that I work with my clients is like, I like to understand, like, okay, why don't I believe this about myself? Why do I think that I'm a fraud? Where did this belief come from? How did I anchor that into the structure of my life,
Mm-hmm.
because we all operate, we've talked about this before. We all operate on these programs, it's like once we integrate a habit, it's like, oh, we don't have to think about it anymore. We just do it,
Mm-hmm.
but so even if we put in a bad program, that bad program is going to run automatically every single time.
Yeah.
And if I don't believe myself, if I don't believe in myself, there is a structure to that disbelief, and it's like, no, words won't change that, and so we just can't throw words at it. We can ask ourselves questions,
Hmm.
but just trying to convince ourselves, well, fake it till you make it. No, no, it's a faked belief never turns into a real belief.
No, and I learned this when I was helping people treat their pain, their physical pain. And when somebody's been in pain for decades, and every time they move, they know they're going to be in pain. And
Yes.
if they're not, it's like some miracle, you know. They start anticipating the pain, and it doesn't matter how you tell them this is moving better now, it's not going to hurt when you move it. They are hesitant to move it. They don't want to because it's like every time they did it, it reinforced the belief that they have about themselves. Oh, well, if I move like that, I'll get pain. And it only takes a couple of times for it to be really reinforced. But when it's been over decades, which often our own beliefs about ourselves are, then it takes a lot more than that, those words, to believe that you can do anything different.
And that is what you just described is such a pattern that we overlay in just about every area of our life. We are our own self-fulfilling prophecy,
Hmm.
and so if I expect that I'm going to suffer for something, well, then I will. If I
Hmm.
believe that I am a fraud, then I will never be acting authentically
Mm.
in my business with my clients, et cetera, because I'll always be waiting for someone to say, aha, I discovered your flaw. You're a fraud, you know. And it's like, I, there might have been one asshole. Can I say that?
Yeah.
One asshole of a boss when I was like 19 years old, and I was like, had this horrible, horrible job as a door-to-door salesman selling merchandise out of my trunk. And he was just horrible. But he's like, you're not a salesperson, you're a fraud, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I told you I didn't know how to do sales.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I've never had anyone in all my various careers ever say, Quebeca, you're a fraud. Quebeca, you're not who you say you are. Quebeca, you can't do what you said you did.
Hmm.
Y- You know, and that type of thing. And it's like, wow. So where does that belief come from?
Mm.
Where does that lack of belief in myself? Why have I convinced myself that I am not who I think I am?
Yeah. And I think at certain points in our lives, we do want to explore those things.
Sure.
But sometimes in business, we don't have the time to do that. You know, it's like, yeah, yeah, I don't really care why. Let's just get to the good stuff, you know. And I
Well,
have found that I'm a very practical person and I like to think about these things when I do have the time, but when I don't, I just need the action steps of what to do next, right? So for me, reframing the way that I'm thinking can help. The way that I heard it explained, I can't remember who it was from now, but it's like we are both holding a beach ball, right? My side is green and your side is red. And I'm looking at this beach ball thinking I'm holding a green beach ball. And you're looking at the beach ball thinking, well, I'm holding a red one. And we can argue until the cows come home about the fact that yours is red and mine's green. But really, when you take a step back and you look at it from a different perspective, you realize it's both. It's like, oh, and then you start to believe different things.
yes.
You know, there's there's a guy I can't. Oh, my memory is like a sieve right now. But there's a guy who has been studying storytelling, and he said that the story that we tell ourselves doesn't need to be true. We just need to believe it.
Right.
So when we find that we're telling ourselves these stories, what we believe is just a story. And if we can change the perspective on the story, oftentimes what we believe changes. Does that happen to you?
Oh, all the time, and I've studied this for decades, and it's what I coach with.
Hmm.
It's I manifest the story that I tell.
Hmm.
It's the bottom line. That's what we
Cool.
all do.
Mm.
And where did that story come from? Well, it came from teachers and parents and siblings and friends and, you know, blah, blah, blah. It came from everywhere, commercials and TV and movies,
Yes.
whether they were good or bad or whatever. It came from manipulation. It came from people trying to convince me of something so they could get what they wanted, regardless of what would happen to me. So it's just a hodgepodge. And it's like, I'll always say, I say a lot, if you're going to make up a story, make it the best story you ever could imagine,
Mm.
right? Because that's what we live out. We live out the story that we believe. And honestly, only about maybe 20% of any of our stories is really true.
Hmm.
The rest of it is literally made up.
Yeah.
It's a hodgepodge of past, present, future, and what we want, what we don't want, our fears and our loves and everything else.
Mm.
You know, we all do it. Some people see the stories, some people hear the stories, some people feel the stories, some have a combination of it. And it doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that your awareness that the life you're living today, the business that you're in today, is the result of the story that you've told yourself that you chose to believe in.
Yeah. That's that's incredible. Because everybody tells themselves stories. I one you said it earlier, one that I hear so often is I'm not a salesperson. I'd said that to myself for years. Well, I'm not a salesperson. How could I be expected to sell anything? Well, if I'm telling myself that, then I'm not going to sell anything because I'm giving myself the excuse. Well, I'm not a salesperson, therefore I can't, I don't need to be getting out there and talking to people and trying to sell my product. Well, it's not my thing. I'm no good at it, so why bother? You know?
And that's brilliant the way that you describe that because, you know, none of us are any good at anything until we start to learn it, number one. Number
Hmm.
two, start to practice it. And number three, start to evaluate the results of our practice and make those shifts and make those changes. For me, I had my first sales job when I was like, I don't know, 12 years old, selling door-to-door Christmas cards for the grade school,
Hmm.
and it was like my dad, had this belief about salespeople. They were manipulative, they were greedy, they were dishonest, and my first few jobs were doing sales, and I was like, that must mean that I'm greedy. That must mean that I'm manipulative. That must mean that I'm, this evil human being that everybody is just like, ooh, get away from. I didn't want to be that kind of person. I didn't see myself in that way, but here I was trying to engage in a practice that I thought everybody viewed in that same way that I learned. And so
Hmm.
I didn't want to be that horrible human being that I was told all salespeople are, all salespeople, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, ooh, I don't want that. But now I've got to go do this to make a living. And now I feel horrible about myself. And now, so I've got this horrible feeling about myself as a human being, and I am a fraud because I'm not being authentic to myself. And, this sounds complicated, but these are the stories
Hmm.
that we tell ourselves. You
Yeah.
know, I didn't create, I didn't create that story initially. I was given information that allowed me to put that story together that then became a story that affected how I did sales, how I felt about my sales, how I felt about what other people felt about me doing sales. Oh my, this is what we do.
Mm.
And it's so stupidly over complex. And it's like, wow. Now it's like, okay, great. I'm a coach, I'm an artist, I'm a musician. I write things, I create things, I offer the services and products to other people. And it's like, is there a way that I can serve you? How can I serve you? Right? And it's like, if I can serve you, that's great, and this is what I charge. And I
Hmm.
have no guilt, no shame about it, because I'm authentic,
Hmm.
because I value myself. And I think that we're going to get here, it's like the next one is to go proof hunting, right? And it's like, where is my sense of value?
Yeah. And I think money is a huge topic of imposter syndrome because we all have these stories that we have grown up with about money, whether we don't talk about it. Like, where I grew up, you don't talk about money. You don't ever tell anybody. In fact, I remember my parents saying to me once, don't ever tell anybody what you get paid,
Exactly.
you know? And so it's interesting how these cultural differences, when we talk about beliefs about money, are
Yeah.
central to how we behave when it comes to business,
Yes. Oh,
you know. And one of the ways that this really came home to me sounds crazy, but it was when I got my rescue dog, right? So she was 2 when I got her, and all they said, the rescue center said to me, was that she's not very good with other dogs, right? So I was thinking, oh, she'll be fine. And we met her a few times, and she would do everything we wanted. She would play, she'd do anything for food, this, that, and the other. Got her home. She was great in the house, took her outside. She wanted to kill everything she saw. I'm not kidding you. I was
oh,
beside myself at certain points, and I thought I just need to give her to a farm or somewhere where she can catch rabbits and, attack things for the rest of her life, and she'll be happy. But because that's all they said to me about her, because that's all they knew about her, was she wasn't very good with other dogs. I was really angry at the time. I was like, how did you not tell me that she behaves this way? But then I started to look at it differently. And I was like, actually, maybe that's helpful because I'm not excusing her behavior by putting her story back on her. Like, oh, I know this about her and she behaves this way because this happened to her, or, she was in this situation earlier in her life. I was like, actually, I don't want this behavior. I don't think it's good for you either. So let's not do that. And it was helping her to move beyond that. And everyone kept saying to me, how did you do it? I'm like, I just tried to create an environment that was challenging for her, but was ultimately successful. And over a period of time and consistency and all that kind of stuff, she has changed. She's not totally changed. 9 years later, she still decides certain dogs that she wants to kill them for no apparent reason. But, that's just life. But that shift in the story, I didn't want that story so that I didn't have an excuse. I didn't want her to behave that way because I could see how stressed she was and how afraid she was. I didn't want her to live that way. So I was really pleased in the end that they didn't tell me what happened to her. I still don't know, and I don't want to know because now she's a totally different dog. She's just crazy, but she's still a troublemaker, but we'll let her off. So anyway, and now I have gone down that tangent. Um, I think the thing for me really is about finding proof in your own life that you are perfectly capable of these things, right? You want to do these things, you want to charge those things, you want to create these products and services and sell them to people, and you need proof that you are worthy of doing that if you want to get rid of imposter syndrome forever. And you need to keep finding the proof. Case studies and stories and testimonials and examples and things like that, situations that you found yourself in that might not be 100% related, like my dog story, but are closely enough related, I think I should have said, that you can take confidence from it, and you can start to apply it and say, well, actually, yeah, in this experience of my life, because lots of us have had lots of life and not a lot of experience in the direction of the business that we want to go in,
Right.
you know? And sometimes the situations in that previous life that can translate and relate to the business that we want to go in. So when you have found that indisputable proof that you've been there and done that and survived, then it's much easier to feel more confident about being in that situation.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's so much to unpack there. You know, you don't get proof of an experiment until after the experiment is completed.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us want proof before we start the experiment?
Oh, yeah. If only. Yeah.
Right? And it's like we do this to ourselves all the time,
Yes.
and it's like, well, I I need to know I'm a good salesman before I start sales, but the only way to become a good salesman is to start selling.
Mm-hmm.
Is to get messy and make mistakes and have 1,000 people say no to you and, have people slam doors on your face and whatever.
Yeah.
You don't get the experience until you get the experience.
Yeah.
We can talk about swimming all day long, but until you jump in the water, you are not going to know what it's like to swim.
No.
And the only proof that you're ever going to get that you're a good swimmer is to swim. It doesn't happen any other way.
No, and it's interesting that you say that because so many times I've been in situations like I used to do martial arts, and the
Great
kids
example.
or
Yeah.
people would really struggle to put the words into physical practice. Like front stance is basically putting one foot in front of the other, but in a position where it's very hard for you to not be knocked off balance, right? So the kids would stand, I don't know, like this, which is like tightrope walking, and you can push them over, and I'd go to them and go, make it so I can't push you over. And I'd just push them a little bit on their shoulder, and they'd be like wobbling all over the place. And so then they'd spread their feet apart. I'm like, okay, now you've got a wider base. Imagine you're stepping over a huge puddle, right? And so they take a big step forwards. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to try and push you over. And then I couldn't push them over. And they're like, oh, I get that now. And oftentimes, finding this proof is just having it related to your brain in a way that makes sense to you. We've all had the experiences, we've all got the proof. It's just we've forgotten all about it, or it doesn't seem to be relatable to what we're doing now. And I think oftentimes just reframing it, like I said before, but also finding it in the first place and describing it in a way that makes sense to you is helpful.
And what a great example that you gave too, and I think it's really important that we take an inventory somehow.
Mm,
We take an inventory of our successes, not just of our successes, but the successes that really meant something to us.
mm,
Because, each one of us, you watching, you've had success in your life already.
yeah,
Unless even if you're 5 years old watching this, you've had success in your life already.
yeah,
You've built a tower of blocks successfully,
yeah.
and then you successfully knocked them over.
And you learn to
And
walk,
it's
and you
like,
learn to talk, and you learn to,
all these things,
yeah.
it's like we take so many things for granted and we set these outrageously unrealistic expectations upon ourselves about who it is that we think we are supposed to be before we can judge ourselves as worthy, as valuable, as valid, as successful, or whatever.
Mm,
We make it impossible. We want it for
mm,
ourselves, but we make it impossible to achieve. We make it impossible for us to accept who we are, you know, because, well, I can't love myself. I can't be worthy. I can't be successful. I can't be until blah, 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 blah.
mm.
The
Yes.
example that I use with my clients all the time is like, I want a goal that's 3 months from now, and that goal is supposed to make me happy. Oh, so you're going to be in misery for the next 3 months until you have joy for 2 seconds, and then you achieve another goal where you're
Yeah.
going to be miserable for another. So what is it that's telling me that I can't be happy, that I can't be valid, that I can't be authentic to myself
Mm.
right here, right now?
Yeah.
What what do I think that's really missing right here, right now, that I have chosen to believe that I am not worthy of what I want to do with my life, the product or service that I want to offer to the people that I know is going to serve them, etc. And I think it's just so important that if you're watching this and listening, that you learn to take an inventory of your successes. You make a database of your successes, and we all have a database of failures. Which
Mm.
database are you looking at that's making you feel the way you feel right now? If
Yeah.
you're feeling like crap, you're looking in the wrong database.
Yeah, and I would be willing to bet that whatever you're doubting yourself about right now, you have proof somewhere in your life that you've survived this before,
Yeah,
So just write it down.
yeah,
Think about that one thing that you're doubting yourself about now. And if there's a million things, just choose the biggest one. And then have a think about the situation in your life before that you have felt like this, been in this similar situation and survived it and what you learned from it. And that's the key, is what you learned from it that counts, because that's the proof that you know what you're talking about. Because nobody, we've said this before on different episodes, nobody has had the same experience of life as you. So
that's right.
you are an expert in your own life.
Yes, absolutely. Would it be okay if we work through a little example? I know that this wasn't planned, but I think that this might fit.
Okay,
Would you like to play a little game?
sure.
Okay.
My
So
inner
you're
brain is going, oh my
I know, right? It's like,
God.
what have I gotten myself into with this guy? So, all I want you to do is just think of 6 successes that you've had in your life. You don't have to tell me.
Hmm.
And while you're watching, all of you watching us right now, just think of 6 successes, random successes, you know? And it could be anything from when you were a kid to something that happened 3 hours ago. It doesn't matter. Any 6 successes. And think of like one of those cube shelves, that have like the 6 cubes.
Hmm.
And what I want you to do is make that cube shelf really amazing. Put colors on it, it's like make it fantastic, memorable. You can put jewels on it, you can put colors on it, and whatever you want to do with it. And then put your most important success in the upper left cube, and then just fill all the other cubes with all the other successes, right? And just very quickly now, you have a space that you can remember in your mind, in your imagination, of 6 very quick examples of you being successful, you being authentic, you achieving obstacles, overcoming obstacles.
Hmm.
And you can refer to this when you encounter self-doubt or imposter syndrome or things like this, when you think that, oh no, somebody like me couldn't possibly be able to do something like that. And then you simply call yourself, ha ha ha, I'm lying to myself, and let's go look at my truth,
Yes.
my truth of my 6 examples. So in less than a minute, you were able to create a space in your being of 6 examples of you being successful that you can remember anytime you want. That's solid proof of your ability to overcome your obstacles
Yeah.
so that you can take the next step forward.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Was that as scary as you thought it was going to be?
No, no, when you were saying think of 6 things, I'm like, I can't remember 6 things, let alone think of them. When you're like, you don't have to tell me, I was like, phew, I need a pen.
Sarah, I can list 30 right now for you. Come on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So, viewers, watchers, listeners, get in contact with us, like and subscribe to this episode, to the podcast, and then comment in the comments below. What is your experience? What are the things that you struggle with imposter syndrome? And let's just get the conversation going.
Yes.
Because when you talk about these things, they don't feel quite so scary anymore. You've clearly seen that we've been through this too, and that was really a lot of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast in the first place, was because solo business owners feel very lonely, feel very isolated. And I just wanted to make you realize you're not on your own. We've all been there. We've all gone through this and continue to go through this occasionally. We don't have everything figured out. And we can't be expected to. You're always going to learn things in life. So it doesn't matter whereabouts you are in your journey, just share your experience with us. If you figured it out, great. If you haven't figured it out yet, don't worry about it. Learn from somebody who has.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you for your time again, Sarah. Thank you everybody for watching. Again, comment, share your stories with us. We'd love to engage with you. And fantastic.
See you next time. Bye.
Cheers.